You know, I could... wait a minute. I could... really having a hard time coming up with an intro idea this time. Hey guys, Hardware Hound here. Today I have a case to review, another case, and this one's from Azza, a company that I haven't had to personally use yet, so this is going to be kind of fun for me. Also, I'm going to try some new things with this case. I'm going to try some new things with the video in particular because I get a lot of questions, simple things like, you know, how do you pull that panel off, and how do you install this or do that? So we're going to take a little bit of a different approach in that I'm going to try to do walkthroughs with the case on video, less pictures, see how that turns out, see what you guys think of it. Also, hopefully it'll help answer some of those questions you have, because I get it. Sometimes things just aren't as obvious as you'd think they would be, and also when you spend money on something, you kind of like to not break it. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to take a closer look. We're going to go through some install steps. Then I'll wrap this up with a conclusion. Okay, let's take a quick close look at this thing since I got it out here and ready to go. So this is, of course, one of the many tempered glass side panel cases that we see. Outside looks pretty nice. I mean, you got a little bit of design here, a little bit of flash. I think what's really cool is that you've got a little bit of extra window in the front on the top here. So it really opens up the build, lets you see a whole lot that's going on in here. Now, the thing about it is this top section and bottom section are not glass, so it doesn't feel like. They're actually just look like more of like a plexiglass type thing. But this side panel is an actual tempered glass finish. So I'm going to go ahead and move this thing around now a little bit. If we look at the top here, got your couple of I/O ports. We've got 3 USB 2.0s and only 1 USB 3.0. I think I would have rather have seen just the 2 2.0s with 2 3.0s. I'm not really sure about that design decision, but hey, we got it there. You've got your audio ports in the top here. So after that, there's not a whole lot going on. Here in the front, got a little bit better view there. You can see that front fan that they've got coming in. There's a little bit of slots here for the air and stuff. You have a CD drive door to hide your bass. You know, some people like that. I used to like it, and then like 2 cases in a row I busted the door off. So not maybe my personal favorite, but that's just a mere preference. This one though is really nicely hinged and put together. The magnets grab really well. So all around, still looking good. Okay, closer look at this back side. Got just a little bit of an exhaust port here for anything in the front, but there is some slots in the top to help with exhaust if you've got your radiator situations in the top. One of the things that I noticed about this case that kind of bothers me is that these Pci slot covers are all welded in. They don't have any removable slots. So once you pop it out, it's out for good. You know, usually you see that on kind of lower end cases. I didn't feel like this as a case is that low of an end, so I'd like to have seen that move to a actual, you know, slide-in slot that you can replace if you decide to, you know, sell the case later, various other things. So next up, we're going to go ahead and look on the inside and take a look what we got going on there. Abracadabra. Okay, so quick look on the inside. Of course, you got your various connectors here. USB 3.0, 2.0, you got your audio. Of course, you know, like I said, with that extra USB port, you end up with 2 USB 2.0 connectors, and a lot of motherboards that starts using it up quick. So that's why I would have preferred to seen 2 3.0 ports cooked into this one wire. I'm not really sure about that decision, but hey, it's what you got. We got a nice PSU cover here, so you know it's kind of, I can take them or leave them, but some people prefer that. I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that, but you know, good cable management can really negate the need for a PSU cover. So let's take a little bit closer look on this inside here. Now I'm going to turn this thing over here. Here's one of the first other things that I noticed that really bothers me about this case. Here we got a Molex connector in these fans. And I don't know if you followed any of my review work or anything, you know I absolutely despise and hate Molex connectors miserably. So that's kind of, to me, a really huge mark against this case. I feel like you should just at least have a 3-pin connector, and if you have a 4-pin with PWM control, that's even better. But, you know, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. More of a preference thing. Now, looks like here we've got some pretty good space for the motherboard. It's probably going to be a little bit of a snug fit, but there's enough space in the top part here that's not going to be too bad. You can fit an ATX board in here, and of course micro, smaller boards. I got some different slots. The cable management slots are looking pretty good. There's even some slots down here to bring the cables up to the bottom of the board, so those are looking pretty good. I'm liking what I see there. Towards the top here, you've got room to mount up to a 240 radiator, and we're going to try that out because I prefer to do liquid cooling over tower anyway. Couple other things about this case. Of course, you got drive space here. I mentioned all that. On the bottom, we do have our PSU filter that is stuck in there pretty good. So I'm pretty impressed with it. But I'm not seeing much in the front. Coming over here to the back of the case, looks like we got a nice, good amount of space right in here for cable management. So that is something that I like to look for in more budget-oriented cases, and I'm pretty impressed to see on this one. So not too bad. Panels. I get asked this a lot in some of my other reviews. A lot of people ask me, how do you take off the panels? So this time I'm going to show it. So in this case, you want to start with the top panel first, and all you're going to do is just give it a good tug, and this whole thing is just going to pop. Now, one thing I like, we've got just the little clip-type pop-ins here. I find these things to be pretty sturdy and hold up to multiple removals and putting back in. And as you can see, that looks like some ample space to throw in a radiator. In fact, I probably double fan put in, you know, push-pull configurations. So, like that design there. That is impressive. So once you got that top one removed, then it's kind of the same principle. There's a slot here that you can grab on the bottom. Just got to give it a nice little tug. And this one's a little bit stickier. And it's going to make that kind of noise, and you're going to feel like you might break something. And that's just a typical day in the office. But that panel comes off nice and easily. Once again, we got those clips. And so, not too bad actually. And some of that was just the angle I was standing. No dust filters here in the front. So that's kind of a problem. You're going to have some dust coming into your case. So overall, that's a good little overview of what this case looks like. You know, minor complaints, but there's some other things that are looking really good. So let's slap a build in there, find out what happens next. Alright, so we got this in part. I'm going to go ahead and start putting this in piece to piece. We don't do like a full exhaustive build. I'll cut out and just kind of get to the basics. But I kind of want to show you how this case goes together, how the build works. So I got everything apart already and ready to go. So first thing to start out with is a PSU, and we're going to go ahead and get that in there. Now, one of the things that I noticed right away is that this particular case doesn't really have a lot of room to slide in, and you pretty much have to slide in from the side because there's no bracket here or anything that comes out. And as you can see, it's a little bit tight here, if you have your cables already plugged in. And yet, I'm not really sure how easily I would get the PSU in there if I didn't, how easily I'd get those connectors in if I didn't have them already connected. So you're not going to have a ton of room for a PSU, but enough. It wasn't too terribly difficult. So far so good. Alright, so the next big piece that we're going to get in here is the motherboard. Another thing too about the PSU, before I move on to the motherboard, there's two little tabs that stick up that kind of hold the PSU in place to keep it from going back and forth when you slide it in. I noticed I had to kind of push them out a little bit to get that PSU to drop down. Wasn't too big of a deal, nothing too complicated. I kind of like that because once the PSU drops in between them, it kind of holds nice and in place. Pretty easy setup there, so it wasn't too bad. So first thing we're going to do with this motherboard, go ahead and put in our I/O shield. And see how well it snaps in, see how the metal feels. And so, giving it a pretty good sturdy push. Trying to get, there we go, about to pop. And it's a little bit hard to reach past this fan. Its fan's kind of close there, but not a big deal. Everything feels pretty sturdy. Like I'm pushing on this, and the case is pushing out just a tiny bit, but it's reinforced well. It doesn't feel super thin. Feels like the case is pretty sturdy there, so I kind of like that. So next, let's drop this motherboard in. Now, with the motherboard, sometimes these things are really tight, hard to get in there. And so this is why I'm doing this, because I really want to see how well and how easy this process is. So usually what I'll do is I'll just kind of grab it I grab the board by the heat sinks, just try to drop her down in here. It's a little bit snug here between the fan and the CD drive tray, but not too bad. Move this little clip out of the way, dropping it down, and we are right in there. It looks like I'm going to have to put a reasonable amount of pressure to get this board to line up to the holes, which requires a little more pushing than I'm comfortable with. Some of that is the I/O shield that comes with the Pro Gaming Aura. It's got a little bit of insulation in there to kind of help. I'm not really sure what that does, actually. Honestly, I don't know if there's a whole lot of purpose to it. But overall, not too bad. I'll make sure that the I/O shield is really popped in there good, and then I'll go ahead and get this motherboard secured in. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, so now you see you got the motherboard all nice and mounted in there. So next thing I'm going to go to is a hard drive. So first off, next to the PSU, right in front, there's a hard drive cage that's right below this PSU cover. And it has these kind of brackets in here. So you can mount an SSD to it. And, you know, by the time you line it up, you're going to be about right here. Seems like these are a little bit close. If you have any angled cables, you're not going to be able to reach very well. If you flip it around, it'll definitely look like it reaches better, but that seems strange to me because that means you're pushing your connectors all the way into the back of the cage. It'd be really hard to plug them in. You'd have to plug them in first and then slide in. Oh, that might work out pretty well because then again, it might get your cables out of the way more. But I'm not going to bother with that. Oh, one more thing about this thing though. We do have a toolless installation for bigger hard drives. There's some little tiny knobs that'll hold it in, but they're really small. I'd probably still put a screw in there to make sure the hard drive doesn't ever slip out while you're moving your case. On the other hand, I like to show off my SSDs. I don't care if it doesn't match 100% to the rest of my build. I just love having SSDs, and I love being able to say, hey. So with that, we can actually put an SSD right here in the front for all the world to see. And so basically it's just going to sit in here, and then all we're going to have to do is just reach a screw through and screw it into the back. And that'll be pretty straightforward. So I'll get that put in there here in just a second, but then once that's in, we'll move over to the CPU cooler side, and then we'll show off a completed build for the most part because that'll cover, I believe, the main details that you're going to want to know about this case. Alright, let's get this CPU cooler in. As you can see, I've added a couple more parts in between. So a solid state drive is all installed, ready to go. The label's upside down. It's kind of a minor annoyance. Kind of be nice if it could turn it around, have the holes going the other way so that the label wasn't upside down. But that's kind of a, I don't know if that's something that SSD manufacturers will adjust to or if that's something that case manufacturers need to adjust to. But either way, not something I'm just terribly worried about. I threw my graphics card in. At first I thought I was going to have a problem because I'd already put this motherboard in, and I realized that this does not have screw-in slot covers like other cases. They're actually spot welded on, and you have to bend them until they pop out. But it cleared the motherboard. I didn't have to take the motherboard out. Didn't have to worry about it. No problems there. So if you put your motherboard in and realize, oh, I didn't get those out, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. You should still be able to pull those things off and put your graphics card in without an issue. So the CPU cooler is going to be the next big thing. Now, if you notice, I've kept my RAM and my motherboard and stuff because I haven't taken it all apart. So the first thing we want to see is how well does this baby slide in with everything in. I'm going to gently try to just angle that out of the way. I'm going to try to angle this guy down in there. And so here's something that is kind of an issue right away. As you can see, this is a little bit tight. Now this is kind of more of a problem with mid-tower cases than it is full tower. Just having tight room to get your CPU cooler in. Now I'm trying to angle this nice and carefully though, because it looks like, it feels like I'm about ready to just pop right down there. And I'm not really sure why I haven't, but there's just not quite enough room. So we're not going to quite have room to just easily slide that in if your RAM's installed, especially if you have higher heat spreader RAM. Thankfully, that's not too big of an issue. We'll just pop these babies out real quick. There's 1, 2. There's more. Make sure those are down. Okay, there we go. 3, 4. All right, now let's try that again. See how this radiator slides in there. Gonna kind of angle it down. The hoses will bend out a little bit, and bam! Look at that. It slides right into place. There's plenty of room to clear everything there. I really like the fact too that this radiator and fan combo is kind of hidden up in this recess, leaving plenty of room for your top connectors on your motherboard. I don't have to reach down past the fans and try to angle up a CPU fan connector or anything that I forgot earlier in the build. This is an excellent, excellent design. Azza gets bonus points for this. So even though I'd prefer to see actual screw-in slot covers in the bottom parts of the slots, I do have one in the very top, but I'm not even touching that slot. Even though I'd like to see that, overall, that's kind of a minor gripe so far. Not having a dust filter in the front, that's a kind of a minor gripe, but that's not that minor. Dust filters are kind of important. Helps keep your build clean, helps keep things inside your computer clean, helps keep things running cooler because they're not being coated in dust. But this design for the radiator install, that is great. I really like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this put together, and then I will show you a finished build, and then we'll start wrapping this thing up. Alright, I know I said I was going to finish this up, but I ran across one thing, and I needed to cover this because this is going to affect some of you Intel users out there. Now, if you look at this motherboard cutout right here, you're going to notice that you got my 2 slots for the CPU cooler, and you got the cutout right here. It's possible that some motherboards might get you lucky into these holes, and you might still be able to install a CPU cooler without taking the whole motherboard out. But chances are, I bet your Intel mounts are going to be right in this panel here. I understand why Azza did this. They built this case to also do mini ITX and are giving you cable management slots here. But if you're an Intel user, and even some motherboards with AMD possibly, you're going to find out that this is going to keep you from being able to just install your CPU cooler without taking the whole motherboard out. So, just try to keep an eye on that. Install your cooler, or at least your mounting system, ahead of time. Especially if you're on an Intel system. I bet you might run into that problem. But outside of that, obviously with an AMD socket, and you can just see right there, I'm not going to have any issues, nothing for me to worry about. So, all right, we'll move it on. All right, so I have a completed build now. Everything's gone along pretty smoothly. Really not a lot I can complain about. The cable management, if you can kind of see what I've done here, there's not a whole lot I've done here. There's no included zip ties or anything to help tie things down. So if you don't already have some, they're pretty easy to pick up, but I get it. You just bought all your new stuff. You're trying to make it look pretty. You didn't think to get zip ties. At the same time, you don't want to wait until you can go to the store, if you live in Rangeley, until something can ship 3 days because there's nothing here. But the thing is that it's without including zip ties. You can't just pick them up and say, okay, let's make this build nice and neat. I feel like that's something that Azza should really do. They're cheap, they're easy, just throw some zip ties in there. It's really great for when people want to do their nice cable managed systems and throw everything else in there. As it is, it looks like they'll have plenty of room to slide that panel in and set it in there pretty easily. So I'm not too terribly worried about it. They do have a pretty good amount of space in the bottom here to tuck away some extra cable if you've got that. So overall, not looking too bad on the cable management, but including some zip ties would be incredibly helpful, especially since they have so many good spots to tie down. So if they just included that, it would that'd just be a huge bonus. But we got to take what we can get in some levels. So far so good. We're going to go ahead and look at the front side of the build, and then we will wrap this thing up. Okay, so there's a finished build for you. Let's go ahead and cover just a few more minor details that I hadn't covered during the build process, because I don't really feel like it's worth the time to show things that are that are very obvious and you've probably run across before. First off, on the fans, both fans use Molex connectors. They do not have any 3 pins to power them. I hate that. I despise Molex connectors. I want Molex to die. SATAs are so much better, and I know people can power to them. It may be slightly more complicated or slightly more expensive. Maybe it's a lot more. I don't know, but I feel like Molex connectors need to die. Also, unless you have literally a power supply that can just decrease the voltage on that 12-volt pin, which is something I've never really seen before, you can't control these speeds. You are stuck with the speed you got, and that really bothers me. Those are things that I really think Azza needs to step up their game and just use 3-pin connectors. Most motherboards have enough. I get it. If the motherboard doesn't, then it's nice that you can plug it in. But we're dealing in a whole brand new game of PCs, and people are buying new motherboards. They aren't having problems with fan connectors. They are having problems with too many cables and clutter and noise. 5-10 years ago, yeah, it was hard to get enough fan headers on your motherboard. You needed controllers and all these things. Today, no, not an issue, or even throwing a fan controller in there so if you want to make sure that people have enough. But the Molex connectors definitely need to die. So that's kind of a little bit of an issue. The other issue I noticed, the CD drive tray here, if you have a 240mm unit, you're going to have trouble fitting it in here. You're going to have to bring these hoses around to the back. But because of the way they positioned it, I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. I don't think your hoses are going to bend into the fan. But that's usually why I never put my hoses on this back side, because I don't want these things to start bending in and hitting the fan blades in the rear exhaust here. So, but like I said, the way they position this radiator, I doubt you're going to have an issue because your hoses are going to drop down. It looks like they're giving you plenty of room. So pretty good design. But, I don't use CD drives anymore, and if I use the bottom one, it'd probably give me enough push up there to take care of it. It's not a big deal. There's no easy clips or anything to do, so that's why I didn't throw a drive in this time, because it's simple. You put the drive in, line up the holes, and screw it in like you always used to do back in the good old days. I don't use drives, and I'm not going to put it in there for something simple as that. So other than that, though, everything went in, slid in well. I really love the way they designed this radiator mount. That is just fantastic. I love that for liquid coolers. Any 240mm unit's going to be nice and easy to slide up in there. The only thing you might have to get out of the way is your tall heat spreader RAM. And if you want to keep your hoses going towards the front like I've got, then you might need to drop your CD drive down to the bottom slot instead of the top. Really simple. Pretty darn good case all considering. Let's go ahead and give this guy an award and wrap it up. Okay guys, now that we've got the build done, let's go ahead and wrap this guy up. So first thing that I've got to mention about this case that I just found out after finishing all the install was this top panel would not snap down. Tried everything, tried looking at it, and I finally found out that the clips that were holding the glass panel, well, the plexiglass panel on the top end, were just positioned wrong enough that they were hitting the radiator. Now, if you have just 2 fans in this 240mm mount in the top, you'll probably be okay. It'll probably clear. But with the radiator having that just a little bit of extra on the ends, the panel wouldn't snap down. Here's the thing that really bothers me about that. It would have been just a little bit of some minor engineering changes of sliding something forward or just having the cutout go a little farther back that would have solved that whole problem. And it would have been no issue whatsoever. I feel like this is kind of a huge oversight on Azza's part. And yeah, if I pull some drill bits out and just drill some new holes, I can probably slide the radiator up enough to get around that. But that shouldn't be what you have to do. If you're going to market a case at 240mm radiators and liquid cooling support, then you should have enough space for everything to snap down. And that's kind of a big glaring problem. Outside of that, though, man, we got a lot of good stuff going on. This case feels like it's got sturdy build quality. It's got some really nice looks. Everything else on the build went really smoothly. I didn't have issues. As you can see, things went by pretty easily. Even though I don't care for the spot welds on the back, I get that for the graphics card slots. I get that on a budget case. You still have a budget case that has a really nice tempered glass side panel, and that's really nice as well. So Azza is doing a lot of things right, and I feel like they're so close to really making some of the bigger companies sweat with some of these releases. But it's engineering oversights like this top panel that's really going to hinder them. Now that being said, if you've only got like a 120 by 120 liquid cooler, obviously you've got nothing to worry about. And if you like this case, then you can definitely consider it. Because here's the deal, at $60 on Newegg, that is a really good value. I feel like they're giving you a lot for $60 compared to other budget cases that I've used in the same range. Also, they have a $20 rebate right now. That puts this guy down to $40 if you catch that. Now granted, that can come and go, but at the time of me reviewing this, that's a really, really good price. So $40 for a case like this, I feel like is an excellent deal. And if you want that glass side panel to show off your build, which the tempered glass is just a great, great thing to see in cases. It does help show the build much better than plexiglass. You're getting a lot for that money. So considering the problems, yeah, I'm a little upset, but considering how well everything else is coming together, I'm really happy with it. With everything and balancing it all out, I'm going to go ahead and give the Azza Titan 240, the Pure Overclock's Great Value Award. I mean, this is still an excellent case for the price. And, you know, if you move some things around with your radiator, make sure your fans are on a pull configuration and they're up against the top, I don't see that you're going to have too many problems with this top panel. And then after that, it's just a nice looking case. So, yeah. Hope you like this review. In the comments below, let me know if you like some of those things where I'm showing how to put the parts in, popping panels off, closer looks. Kind of want to get some feedback on that because I think that's going to be a direction I'm going to take. Gotten a lot of questions in times past, like just questions on how do you take the panel off. And those are valid questions, especially when you're like, do I just yank on it or am I going to break something? You know, I've broken some clips before. Hate it when I buy a case and break something. So I know what you guys are going through. I understand why you're asking these questions. So let me know if that works. Let me know how you like the review. Of course, like and subscribe if you do like it. And I will catch you later.